Hello and welcome to Mom's Way to Wellness. I'm your host, Aida Maravillas, and I'm so glad you're here today. Today we're talking about burnout recovery. As we wrap up this series on burnout and motherhood, I want to take a moment to bring everything together and talk about burnout recovery. Because when we realize that we are feeling burned out, it can feel very overwhelming. And sometimes we have to acknowledge what it's costing us in order to make a change. So I want to start with this question. What if burnout has been affecting more than just how you feel? We've talked about the signs of burnout, what it's like to feel lost in motherhood, the mental load we carry, overcommitment and capacity, and how rest can help us start to recover. Today, I want to talk about some things that really make a difference when it comes to dealing with burnout. And I want to start with a moment from my own life. A few years ago, I took a leave of absence from my job. At the time, I called my job a career. It was a big deal. My position, it was something I did for so many years. It was something that I went to school for, very, very specific and specialized in my education. And thankfully, it's something that I was able to transfer over to what I am doing now. But it's something that was so familiar, something that I built my life around. I built my routines around, something that my whole family had to adjust to. And it worked for my family for a long time. It did. We found a way to make it work. But over time, I started to realize that I needed to take steps to take care of myself because no one else could do it for me. Ultimately, it was my responsibility to figure out if the system could support me or if I need to figure out if I needed to figure out a new system. The system that I had learned to function in and to help others through, it wasn't going to change in a way that protected my well-being or my needs. So I stepped away. I stepped away for a little while for me to figure out some things and decide whether or not I would return or whether or not it was time to make a change. And it was not because I had everything figured out, because a lot of times we don't. We don't have everything figured out. We're figuring it out as we take every step, as we parent every child, as we go through every challenge. We pivot, we're flexible, because as moms, we learned that we have to be, especially depending on what we bring into our motherhood. So something that needed to shift within me was something that I needed to figure out. And during that time of my leave, someone asked me how I had been feeling. And my daughter was with me, my youngest daughter, and she was standing next to me. And I turned to her and I asked her to answer. I asked her to be honest. And I said, "Have you noticed anything different about me since I took the leave of absence? Be honest." And she was. She said something like, "My mom's in a better mood now and she doesn't yell as much." That moment stayed with me because I had felt the weight of burnout in my body throughout my work days, my missed lunches, the emergencies, being pulled in a lot of different directions from the moment that I walked through the door, and showing up for other people because they needed me to. I had to. It was what I did. But then after that shift, showing up at home after a long day to have to manage all of the other ways that we show up as moms, I hadn't fully realized how burnout was showing up in my relationships. It wasn't something I was just experiencing internally. It was shaping how I showed up with the people who mattered the most. It was impacting moments that could have been tender, presence when it mattered, and the emotional tone of my home. That moment was so eye-opening for me. It helped me realize the magnitude of what life could feel like without the kind of weight that the particular job I had added to me. Awareness helped me to see how burnout wasn't an isolated group of feelings that clocked in and out with me when I showed up to work. We can't compartmentalize our feelings, our emotions. We're human beings that carry every experience in our body. And so we can do things to help buffer, to reset, to try to be more present. But compartmentalizing, I think it's more numbing than anything when we think we can set it all aside and somehow turn off the emotional impact that stressful days have on us. Again, unless we've done something to intentionally reset when we get home to our families. Burnout for me had become a part of my story in a very quiet way. It seeped in over time and it made its way in from moments when I pushed through, when I actually couldn't say no. Like, there were volunteer opportunities that I did have the ability to say no to, but on the job, what can we really say no to in a system that has expectations for us? And so even when I needed to say no, I wasn't able to. And from continuing to give without enough space to replenish, my day to day just became unsustainable for me. And that's what burnout looks like most of the time. It's unsustainable. It doesn't arrive one day out of nowhere. It builds slowly until it starts to show up in ways that we can't ignore. And if you've been listening to this series, you may have started to recognize the signs. Feeling drained by things that used to feel life-giving, feeling less patient with others in your daily interactions, feeling disconnected from yourself. And if that's where you are, I want to remind you that recovering from burnout is possible. As we bring this series together, I want to simplify what we've talked about in a few key shifts. First of all, self-awareness creates clarity. Recognizing burnout is a starting point. It's the beginning of recovery. When you name what you're feeling, you can understand what you need. It's like standing at a mall and looking at the mall directory and looking for a particular place that you want to shop at. The starting point usually says you are here. This is where you're able to expand your view and get an idea of which direction you need to walk in and how many stores away it's going to be. That's what self-awareness is. It's recognizing I am here and this is not where I want to be. This is not healthy for me. The next step is to reevaluate what you're carrying because burnout grows when we continue to carry more than we have the capacity for. It's recognizing your limitations, recognizing your strengths, and recognizing where your energy is being poured out. Where is it being poured out from? If it's an empty container, if there's nothing left to give, then chances are it's being communicated in ways that might not be realized. So this may mean looking at your commitments, reprioritizing what matters most, and letting go of expectations that are no longer sustainable. Recovery requires intention. That is the last shift. It is intentional. Burnout doesn't get resolved in one step. It takes intentional steps toward rest, support, and reconnection. These things can look different for every one of us, but the beautiful thing is that there are so many ways to rest and to reset. And when I say reconnection can mean connecting with yourself, connecting with others in intentional ways, with a support system, with your family members. It just means finding yourself and finding the ways that bring life to you, the ways that bring energy to you, the ways that help you to feel like you have something to give again. As you reflect on where you are at right now, here are a few questions to consider. First question is, What do I actually need in this season? This season of parenting that you're in, this season of motherhood that you're in, it could look very different. Sometimes we need time with others. Sometimes we need quiet time. The other day I went on a walk and I was feeling overstimulated, as that is the trending word today for feeling stressed and overwhelmed. My senses were on overload and I took my dogs for a walk. And on the walk, I started to listen to a podcast and then I realized this is not what I need right now. I need the walk, but I don't need to stimulate another one of my senses into tuning into something and receiving. I needed to unplug. So I turned off the episode that I was listening to and I just listened to nature. I listened to the birds. I listened to the wind. I listened to the leaves in the trees. I looked around and I took in the scenery of a beautiful day, a blue sky, and thankfully the dogs were cooperative, so it turned out to be a nice walk for me that day. But it's about figuring out, what do I need in this season? And it was a small break. It was a small moment that I needed that really just helped boost my mood and my energy for the rest of the day. The other question, or the next question, is what am I carrying that may need to shift? Is there a commitment that I just need to see through to the end of the deadline that's set? Is there a commitment that I need to figure out if I can reevaluate and, I'm sorry, but remove myself from? Is there, and I say I'm sorry because it could be hard to step back on your commitments. Is there some way that I could figure out to buffer? And when I'm asked to commit to something, to really take a moment and pause before I answer, to see if it's my energy level that I'm going to be able to bring to the event, to see how many nights a week I'm already committed to be outside of the home, to determine whether or not it's something that I should continue to serve in, if it's like a committee or some sort of group that you're a part of. What am I carrying that may need to shift? Shifting commitments doesn't mean forever. It could mean for a season. It's about knowing, again, what your limitations are and assessing where your family is at right now, what their needs are. And this next question is, where can I begin to create space for rest? Rest can look differently. We talked about it in another episode that rest and sleep are not the same thing. Rest is something that you do when you're awake. It's something that you enjoy. It's something that replenishes you. So for me, the walk that I said that I took the other day, that walk was a rest from the things that I needed to finish accomplishing that day. It was a break from some of the things that were going on at home that I knew I needed to tackle, but I just didn't have it in me to do it in that moment. It was rest, even though there was activity and movement in it. Rest can include movement. It is just a matter of figuring out what works for you. It's leaving a situation or stepping away from something for a moment. And I want to take a moment to come back to my story, because my story involved leaving a situation, and that's not always the case. Leaving a situation or stepping away from something like I did, it's not always the answer. Sometimes there are things that you can do that make it sustainable for you, whether it's taking a lunch or leaving the building for a specified amount of time to get that uninterrupted time. It's a matter of whether or not the system is conducive to the change that you need. Sometimes, though, the work is learning how to set boundaries, learning how to ask for help, shifting expectations, and building in moments of self-care. These are things that matter no matter what you are doing, no matter if it's a job that you're getting paid for outside of the home, or even if it's in your motherhood, because burnout can happen in parenting. And parenting and mothering, It is a system. There's a system that we build in our homes. It's a system that we have more influence over than we might realize, especially when we are setting the tone rather than reacting to everything that's happening around us. So, when it comes to motherhood, you have more influence in your home than you might realize. And I want to encourage you as we close this series out to consider that you don't have to change everything all at once. You can begin with one small step. For me, the other day, one small step literally was a walk. It was one small step at a time. It was me realizing in the moment, I don't have the capacity to listen to a podcast and learn anything and process information and take anything in right now. I just have to be. I just have to be in this moment, take in the fresh air, get this movement, and get through this time that I'm able to take a break from the things that I have to get back to. And that moment of rest was enough for that day. It doesn't have to be for the long term. A short-term goal is just fine. One decision to care for yourself in a way that you need is important. You're not alone in this, and you were never meant to do it all alone. If you tuned in today and you didn't get a chance to listen to the other episodes in the Burnout series, I encourage you to take the time to listen to them. If you are watching on YouTube, I will link the Burnout series in the description below. And if you are listening on one of your favorite streaming platforms, I will list the episode numbers in the description, the numbers and the titles. I am so glad you've been part of this conversation, and I will see you in the next episode of Mom's Way to Wellness. Thank you so much for showing up to be with me today, because in one small step, you showed up for yourself by being here. Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you thought of someone who can use the encouragement that you received from this episode, please share it with them. If you would like to receive the monthly newsletter and insider information about the show, you can sign up to be part of the Mom's Way to Wellness community at aidamaravillas.com.